correct?
Yes. The academy was not the initial interest of the local Chicago attorneys. What happened was Bill Sampson had a case and he got shut aside and they wouldn't hear it. So he came screaming over to Sam Rinella. So it was really Bill Sampson's idea to get a group of divorce lawyers together to see what pressure could be put on the hierarchy of the Superior Court. Back at that time we had Superior and Circuit. He came over to see Sam, and I got to say that Sam's a sine qua non of getting the academy going and being where it is today. The first that I remember was we had a luncheon at the Sherman Hotel, one of their rooms on the second floor, and there were a group of attorneys that did divorce work. All of them, I think we probably talked about them at lunch. I wouldn't independently remember all of them. Well, one thing, as I told you at lunch, I would like to say, Herb Gleiberman has never been given credit for being a founder. Herb and I were the first treasurers of the group of Chicago people who eventually became the Academy. And Herb had a contact over to American National Bank on LaSalle and Washington. So Herb and I went over and opened a savings account with the money. Maybe digress just a little bit. We all sat around a table about this size, and everybody ordered. And when the bill was brought, everybody would kick in the cost of what they ordered plus tax and tip. And some people were more generous. Anything left over was how the Academy's treasury started. Herb was there, Sam, Bill Sampson, I think Ed Rosenberg, Bernie Kaufman. Do you remember any other people? Bernie Rinella?
I was there. I'm trying to recall any others.
Stan Ehrlich,
I don't believe Stan was there.
Harry Cole.
I don't believe Harry was there. I think it was the group that Owen has mentioned were the original, if you will, founders, or at least that initial meeting was the meeting that set this thing into action. And as Owen says, because we never got any respect from our local courts, we decided, or these gentlemen decided to do something about it and organize and see if we didn't want to, the ABA didn't help us, obviously, in local matters. And
the Chicago
Bar didn't help us in local matters, and the Illinois State Bar didn't help us. So we said, we're going to form our own organization, and we're going to do something about it. And that was the inception of the Academy, which, of course, the original founders said, let's branch this thing out, let's make this a national organization. After several meetings, because they knew that other family lawyers in other states were having the same problem that we were having, and that was getting something done within the court system.
Do you recall who out of state you solicited the initial
Well, Sam and Ed Rosenberg and Jim Forkins went to New York and talked to Phil Solomon. And then after that, I think Sam and Ed Rosenberg went to California. And I'm not sure of the man's name they contacted. He was in San Francisco. And Phil Solomon organized a chapter in New York. And we had one chapter in California. Later on, Minnesota came in, and Florida came in, and Texas, Pennsylvania. The first president, well, as I said, Sam was a sine qua non. He knew that in order to get any credit or credibility with the politicians, we better have some high class lawyers. So Sam got Bill Boyden and Davis, who handle the more high class divorce cases, to be Bill Boyden to be the first president, and then Sam was the second. Harry Cole was the third, and Jim Forkins was the fourth. Harry Cole died during his presidency, and Jim served out the balance of his time. So actually, Jim ended up serving 3 years as president. And then it went on from there.
Who was our first out-of-state president? Was that Solomon from New York?
I think Phil Solomon.
Phil Solomon, because we were making all kinds of efforts to bring in these other states so we'd have more of a national organization at that point. And then we sort of alternated, didn't we, for a while? Our state, out of state.
Chicago and then out of
Right.
state.
Yeah, that's what we tried to do.
I think Harry Fain and Ed Schaefer.
Gary Fain from Southern California.
Well, it's
Eddie Schaefer from New York.
That's your friend. Bernie left a message for somebody from his office to call. Is that what that is?
I don't hear it ringing though, so I think
No,
it's
no,
okay.
don't worry about it.
Oh.
So, yeah, we wanted to expand the group. That was our whole thing.
How did they initially determine who was gonna get in, other than the charter members?
Well, initially, we required examinations to make sure that they knew the divorce law and knew taxation and other things. I don't remember now who was on the examination committee.
I couldn't remember that either.
We used to have one.
I don't think we were as selective as we are today. We were looking for members, as I recall, but they had to be qualified, and I think they had to be members of the ABA, family law. I think that was an early requirement, so that meant something that they had to really have some experience, at least broadened experience through the ABA.
Oh, and when were you president?
I think 83 to 85 or 85 to 87.
And
No, 83 to 85, I'm pretty sure.
you're retired now,
Correct.
and your last activities with the academy were about how long?
My last real activities with the academy was probably the election in the fall of '85. I think probably November of '85. After that, I've not really had a great deal to do with the academy.
I was gonna ask you, from the time that the academy started until '85, what changes did you see come about in the academy, other than more fellows?
Well, one of the things was that it expanded from being just a local Chicago organization to other states. I think that when I was president, we had several states, Pennsylvania, New York, California, Minnesota, Michigan,
Connecticut, Wisconsin.
Connecticut. So it had progressed from the beginning of, in '82 to '83, '85. By then, we had acquired, whatever you want to say, there were several chapters. And I think was the requirement they had to be at least 10 members?
Yes, before they could have a chapter.
Right.
No, actually, I think it was more.
Was it
I
more
think
than that?
10 members to petition, and I think you had to get up to 25 in order to be a
okay.
chapter.
So it took quite some time
Yeah.
to do that.
We also had the problem where individuals didn't run chapters because they liked the exclusivity of being the only academy member or two in their state.
Yes, you could be a member of the academy even though you didn't have a chapter in your state.
Right.
And there were certain proprietary interests in some people. But I think that that was overcome, and eventually, I don't know how many members there are now, but there was probably maybe 300-400 at most in '85. I don't know how many there are now.
We had our first seminar, I think, in '62 at Loyola University. Jim
Oh.
Forkins set that up, and we had Professor Foster from New York, and we had some quality speakers. And I think I happen to be the co-chair of that seminar, and I'd say at that seminar we had at least 150 to 200 people, because we opened it up to law schools. Remember that?
Mm-hmm.
We had Loyola, the Chicago schools, and and the newspapers were there because we were a new organization. I mean, that kicked us off. It gave us some credibility, and we got some quotes in the paper. And it was from that time forward. Obviously, the quality of these things, although the first was a very good one, and the older ones were good, the quality of these seminars today is just fantastic, and the quality of the membership is wonderful today. Not that the older folks weren't, but people are more specialized even today than them.
Owen, what, during your 2 years as president, what do you believe was your biggest accomplishment as far as advancing the academy?
My biggest accomplishment was when I left, it was, I'm going to say, I can't be right, but I think there was 400,000 in the treasury. I built the treasury up.
You could be right.
Well,
It was
back
those cheap hors d'oeuvres.
back initially, the presidents paid Frank Whitmer's salary until Jim Forkins, at which time he said no way. When I was president, I went out to Pennsylvania because there was that proprietary interest, I think, there. Pennsylvania or New Jersey? Maybe it was New Jersey. And we held a Chicago-type election, appointed certain people and voted them in, and then it took off. But I think I paid my own way, airfare and everything. Initially, the academy didn't spend a lot of money on traveling around or anything else.
No.
You paid your own way.
True.
Nowadays, I don't know what they, but
You're the last charter member.
I think, well, unless somebody gets Herb to be a charter member, but I think I'm the last designated charter member.
Just for the record, Frank Whitmer was our first executive director, correct?
Correct. And Frank had his faults, but he helped. He had the expertise in organizing associations. He was a legal law book salesman for some company, and he was in and out of a lot of organizations and offices. And if you overlook his faults, he did a lot of good for the academy too. I think the original people had a lot of interest in trying to get this organization going for the benefit of divorce lawyers. As Bernie and I were saying, we were considered the proctologists of the legal profession. Silk stocking firms didn't handle divorce work, and the PI lawyers had a pretty good in, and so we would get assigned out, and the judge would be too busy to hear us. Excuse me. One of the things I did in the very beginning was hire a young University of Chicago Law School student to do a survey of the judges, and I don't remember how he was paid. I hope Sam paid him. Anyway, his designated duty was to go to the courtrooms at 9:30, sometime in the middle of the day, and at 12 and at 2, making sure the judges were sitting on the bench, not back in chambers playing cribbage. I think he did about 2 days, and they started screaming and hollering at him and got him in before Harold Ward and Chief Judge of the Superior Court, and wanted to know what he was doing. And I guess he told him, because it wasn't long after that we got a little respect.
If I'm not mistaken, at one point, you did a survey of the local judges.
And that's what I'm...
And you refused to release it, probably because of the negative comments, but I don't recall.
Well,
I recall that
I
too.
recall that.
Fortunately, I forgot it.
Yeah, that's why it never was disseminated, because you lost.
Well, this law student probably gave me what he found, and so that would have been it. But what happened to those papers, I don't know.
Never
I
saw.
think we were originally going to give it to the presiding
We
judge.
were, to Judge
And it
Boyle.
was so negative that we decided, or Owen decided, I'm not going to, because we'll lose any judges we have now.
No. Well, that was the reason for starting it initially, was because we just couldn't get contested trials. And even when you had prove-ups, you sometimes got put off for a week or more.
Oh, when you finished your term as president, did you believe that the academy had succeeded in what the original goals were when you started?
Honestly, I didn't think about it. But actually, in thinking back, the initial goal was local and not national. And Sam and Rosenberg and Jim Forkins and who else was instrumental, branched it out into other states. And I would say that, yes, by the time I was president, it had far exceeded anything we even contemplated at the beginning.
I remember discussing way back when the international aspect of this thing. Having lunch with, I think it was Victor Newmark and several other lawyers, and they were saying, you know, this could, because it was catching on in the United States, and we said this could be something even bigger. And then everybody said, are you kidding? International, you know, here we are today. We have an international academy.
Well, I think we had one from Canada, didn't we?
We did have an early member from Canada.
Calvin Samuels had been in originally, and now I believe he's a full member of the academy.
Yeah, he is.
Yeah.
And we have other members from Canada, I think in the academy. don't we?
Yes, I think they changed the bylaw. Bernie, so you weren't a charter member, but you were there from meeting number 1.
I was taking notes. I was a kid.
But you have been active still today.
Still active, great organization. I mean, it's like Owen says, this thing has blossomed into something that none of us could really imagine. And what I like is the enthusiasm of the membership today. It's fantastic. I love going to the meetings, the national meeting here in November and the March meetings. I mean, seeing the new members and the quality of the people in this organization today is just fantastic. I mean, if the founders, here's Owen. I mean, it's amazing. Owen, when you look back.
Far beyond what we thought.
And then, I mean, we had the quality of the lawyer back in our day, with the exception of a few people who did specialize. You get these people that do the real estate closing, you know, the usual mixed bag. Today, everybody's a specialist, and it makes it so much better for not only lawyers, but more importantly for the clients. They get the benefit of the Academy's publishing with the various publications. It's just an amazing organization, and we're all proud of it.
I will compliment you.
I'm sure your dad would.
You've been the longest serving member of the academy as far as continuously being involved in the academy.
I'm old.
Well, you look good for somebody old.
Thank you.
But is there anything that, and I have to direct this to Bertie because Owen hasn't been active recently, is there anything that you'd like to see done done differently in the academy?
Good question.
Things
There's
we may have
no-
gotten away from that we did originally?
There's nothing glaring, you know, I mean, as I pointed out, I think these seminars are excellent. I think we've got into the arbitration and mediation. I think we're moving with the flow today, where nobody's passing us up. We're actually ahead of what's going on, I think, the academy is. Collegiality, you know, is something, I think within academy members it's good, but sometimes you still find in our practice that particularly younger lawyers who are more aggressive because they're less confident. I think that's an area where we can all improve the practice. Maybe, I can't recall if we've had a seminar on that. I think we may have years ago, but otherwise, I think in terms of education, these seminars are very good. Any organization can improve, there's no question about that. To pinpoint an area, that's the only thing I can think of offhand where maybe we could disseminate information, maybe not so much to the older practitioners, or actually to everybody, because everybody occasionally slips over the line. Collegiality would be my only comment.
Do you think that we have done enough, the academy, and I don't mean to put you on the spot, in order to get the public more knowledgeable about what we do, both from the academy point of view and from owner lawyers?
I know we're continually trying. We've done films, we've done periodical books, pamphlets. I know that we have a public relations arm, that we have a public relations person. I think we're doing as much as humanly possible. People aren't too interested in hearing about divorce lawyers, but what we're trying to do is show the good that we can do and actually do. How much more the public's going to want to hear about us, I can't say that there's anything more. We're in the press with the latest situations, and our presidents are commenting on certain cases. We're in the New York Times occasionally, Wall Street Journal. We're out there. It's just a question of how much more could we be out there and how much more could we be appreciated. They're never going to appreciate divorce lawyers anyway. But I think we've got our oar in the water, and we're pulling.
Oh, and I don't know if you're aware of it, but I'll show you how far we've come. Yesterday, a hearing started on whether or not a mother can circumcise an 8-year-old child. The father was trying to get an injunction against it. That's where we've evolved to today. Anything else you'd like to say?
Well, I was going to say in conjunction with what Bernie was saying, initially, there were certain attorneys that were known as bombers that we excluded from the organization. And so that would be certainly something the academy should continue to do. Those kind of people who are more interested in their own pocket or glorification than they are the family should not be members of the academy.
Or was there a meeting at any time, or Bernie, at the beginning where you sat down and said, yes, we'd like to get them in, or no, we don't want these particular people in?
The answer is yes, but I'm not going to say who.
I'm not going to ask you.
Yes, there were certain local Chicago lawyers that, well, as a matter of fact, one particular kept applying and not accepted, applying and accepted, and it took a meeting. It was over in the YMCA building when they finally, maybe 90% of the people said, well, if we get him in, we can control him. They didn't, but they let him in.
If I remember, it just came back to me, you're the president, when you were president, we tried to get the plaque back.
Yes.
From someone who was no
Who's
longer-
had a heart attack, or no, a stroke.
Who no longer was a member.
Right.
Didn't
Wasn't
pay his
paying
dues. I
Didn't
remember
And we tried to
that.
get the plaque back, and it was for Clement action, and I know we weren't successful, but
Yeah.
I do remember
He
that
should
situation.
remain nameless.
Nameless, right, he's deceased. So.
yes, he is.
But I think we tried to bring in obviously the qualified people. And I also think we sort of brought in a fringe of some other people who were not what you call specialists, because we wanted to get them in the mix and educate them as well. I thought we were looking for that
At
too.
the very, very beginning, you're right. But also,
Beginning.
the people who, I think that we started that you had to have a certain percentage of your practice divorce work, and you had to be admitted a certain number of years. I don't know whether that's still required or not.
I think the restrictions are even more so now.
Yeah, more-
You get a greater percentage in a community where you can.
Well, except, let's say, South Dakota.
Right, that's the exceptions, maybe,
Yeah.
you can't do that. We have members. from
We
South
have
Dakota.
very good members from South Dakota.
Well, then I better
Yeah.
pick another state, but I meant a farm state where there's not enough matrimonial cases to support a law firm,
Right.
and they do other things. Yeah. That's what I meant.
Yeah.
Well, thanks, that's terrific, I appreciate.
Thank you,
what
Arthur.
put down.
Thank you for your
No, thank
work